AustCham. Welcome to another sponsor interview, and today I have ANCA with me, and I have Nicholas Doyle from ANCA, who has a history, I guess, between both ANCA Machine Tools and ANCA Manufacturing Solutions. So, and quite a history to this company, and not to say that I also have a history with that company, but ironically. So I guess introduce yourself first in terms of your roles, etc., through ANCA.
I suppose I started in Ireland. When I left university, I worked in CNC machining. I did CNC machining for about 20 years. I ended up traveling in Asia for about a year. And by the time I finished in Asia, I landed in Australia and ran out of money. So I started working in recruitment, and then positioned myself into a role in CNC machining. And after about 3 years, I got into ANCA. And I basically wanted to go into ANCA. Like, it was a global company, a company in the CNC industry, something I was passionate about. And basically stayed in ANCA for about 5 years before we ended up getting transferred to Thailand. I requested to go to Thailand. Originally been Irish, obviously, Australia and Ireland halfway, so it made traveling home that much easier. But yeah, ANCA has been a really good company to work for. ANCA stands for, we talked a little bit about ANCA. ANCA stands for Australian Numerical Control and Automation. So they originally started as an automation company. They created their own servo drives, motors, and software, and they did some automation projects for many different companies. One of the first projects would have been for radio stations. So like at nighttime, instead of having someone swapping over tape decks, they had a little robot that they made that would swap out tape decks to keep the radio playing all night. And they did some automations like turning a manual milling machine into a CNC machine. And they eventually found a customer who said to them once, look, we have a need for a CNC tool and cutter grinder, and the machines that are in the industry are pretty crap, but we love your software, we love your motion systems. Would you ever think of making a machine? And that turned, a little spark on in Pat McCluskey, and he apparently went off to his drawing board with his T-square and his pencil, and within 3 months they designed and manufactured and built a whole prototype that they brought to market. And that machine was nothing like the industry had seen. Previous machines were ugly, they had cables and hoses everywhere, and they're a large footprint. This machine was small, it was neat, tidy, everything was enclosed, and it was smart. And that machine took off, and ANCA is now the global leader in CNC tool and cutter grinder machines.
The innovation and the technology, the development that has to occur, that has to be a constant thing. There must be R&D activities.
100%, yeah. I think 10% of everything that they do is cycled back into research and development. They've always been one of the most innovative companies as far as I've seen. I've used many CNC machines. My background is all CNC machining, so for me to move to a CNC company seemed logical. But then when I got the opportunity to use the machine, I was really surprised about how simple it was. The software was very conversational. You could rewind and fast forward the program very easily. And the whole machine is basically designed in ANCA and manufactured in ANCA. They're a very vertically integrated company. A lot of machines are very similar in how they're made. It's the software that can really make the difference between a good machine and a great machine. I think that's where ANCA's put a lot of their energy into that.
It's a very precise industry in terms of manufacturing, so
yeah,
there is very little tolerances in the development of these machines.
Yeah, I remember when I started, like I'd worked in the CNC machining, and I was used to tight tolerances, and then I started in ANCA, and I was like, oh shit, these are some tight tolerances. And then getting down to like temperature controlled rooms and hand scraping of the bases, and televalves for measuring the flatness of the beds, just to make sure that you had this perfectly flat bed, and then how they were measuring the rails to get the alignment of the machine. And that's something that ANCA's been really good at. Is that high precision, high assembly criteria, and been able to achieve it and do it all internally. And I think that's where ANCA Manufacturing Solutions is benefiting a lot from being part of that ANCA group.
That's the interesting part, because there's actually two parts in Thailand for you've got your you've got tool manufacturing, and you've got manufacturing solutions. One is obviously very focused, but you also have diversified the business in terms of.
Yeah, so maybe I'll take a little bit of a step up and kind of, for people who don't know the company that well, as part of the ANCA group, there's 4 different business units. So you have the ANCA CNC machines, they're making the CNC machines. Then you have ANCA Motion, who is technically a supplier to ANCA CNC machines, but they provide the servo drives, the software, and the motion control systems. And they also outsource. So they also have a portion of the business which is external. So they'll provide to water jet machines or laser machines or single-use packaging applications, or there's other sectors. So that's the second business unit. The third one is mine then, which would be ANCA Manufacturing Solutions. And our core competency, and when you started, was sheet metal solutions. So it's laser cutting, folding, welding, painting, assembly. And the last unit was formed during COVID, which was ANCA Engineering Solutions. So basically what happened was, during COVID, there was a shortage of ventilators in Australia. So ANCA partnered with Bosch BAMS in Australia, and they helped to make a ventilator for Australia. And they basically found that, we have 150 design engineers, we've got all this precision assembly capabilities, we were really good at lean methodology and creating whole assembly lines, we're good at automation, and they brought that system and said, why don't we just take that to market? So they've since spun off and they're working in other sectors, aerospace and defense, for example, but and that's what ANCA Manufacturing Solutions is doing now. We're kind of grasping that and say, look, ANCA as a group has so many capabilities, from ANCA Motion with all the technology and servo drives, from ANCA Machines, from the assembly and the high precision assembly. Let's utilize that and offer that as a package to our customers. One
thing with ANCA, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on between Thailand facilities and Australian facilities. And there, I remember there was, people were coming backwards and forwards, not just Australians, but Thais as well. So there's a lot of work that goes on in developing people and the movement of people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of benefit in that. Like we get to learn from ANCA's 50 years of experience. ANCA was formed in 1974, 51 this year, so that they've developed a lot of process and procedures, and we utilize that a lot. Some of our departments, I report directly to Australia, my boss is in Australia, but some of our departments are dotted line back to Australia. So like finance, for example, would be managed out of Australia. HR are working really closely with Australia, same with safety. We try to leverage the group's capabilities and the benefits of having that group support as much as possible. And I think one of the benefits we do find is that in the last 4 years, we made a lot of investment. I think when you were there, we had 3 factories. Yeah. We expanded that 3rd factory into a larger facility, and we've got 2 more since then. We put in a lot of machinery since then, like CNC machines, CNC routers, automation on laser machines, folding machines. So that investment all came because of the backing in the ANCA group, which is great. For me, if I'm able to do a business case and say, look, I have a customer, I have a contract, this is the outlook, this is how it's going to pan out. I need to make some investments to realize these sales. Yeah, sure. It's a lot easier, rather than dealing with a bank and trying to get loans, which can be tricky. Having that support of the group allows us to be a lot more flexible and agile than other customers, other suppliers in Thailand or even globally. It gives us a competitive advantage to be agile as possible.
I do remember when I came there, yes, we were moving ANCA machine tools to the new facility. Yeah. And then we had to move, in those days called tin fish. But move that into and redo the ANCA facility. But a lot of growth has happened, and that's something you've had to deal with. Is how to get that growth is one thing. What is it that how do you get growth?
Yeah, so it's a tricky question, because growth can be really good, but when you have too much growth, it can also be an issue. Yeah. And I think one of the things we found is finding sales is not really the issue. We can get customers. The problem is finding the right customers. We've hired a business development manager about 2 years ago, James Nippard. We've just put a business development manager into Australia, Colin Oakley. So between those two guys now, we're really focusing on our sales strategy and saying, look, we don't want to be opening ourselves up to everything. You know, we want to focus our sales strategy on certain key sectors. We want to focus on certain types of customers. If we're focused on our sales strategy, it really helps the rest of the back end of the office to not be inundated doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. We're focused on work that's actually adding value. And a big part of that is something that took me a while to learn is you have to choose your customers. You know, when I started, you know, oh, we need sales. And I was like, yeah, let's go. I'm saying yes to everything. And we just end up drowning. And it's not the way to go. You have to, it took me a while to learn that you have to choose your customers.
Agree. So, last question for you. And I think ANCA is a great example of it, but the leadership and the vision, how does that develop?
We do it collaboratively as a management team. We do it also with, we call it SSP, with ANCA Australia. But basically, we look at we do a really strong analysis on where we are. What's our SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. We look at my assessment, we look at the manager's assessments of their own departments and try and have a really strong understanding of where we are. And then we try to look at, right now we're working on 2030, you know, shortly that will switch to 2035, but we're looking at 2030. So what's coming, you know, with regards to sustainability, AI, what market segments are going to rise higher than others in the next few years? Where do we want to focus? Do we want to focus on agriculture? Do we want to focus on sustainability, EVs, inverters, you know, things like this? So we did a lot of study on market trends. We look at current market conditions, and then from there we look at what our value proposition is to the market and see, you know, what is our unique selling point and how are we able to, where do we fit in, basically.
I guess you've gone through that growth, and then now you're at that point where you really need to focus on those areas which make more sense.
Yeah, and we've hired key business development managers for Asia, and we've one for Australia. Next, we'll probably be looking at business development for Europe, and then after that, we'll see what happens in America, and we'll make a decision on what we do there.
Yeah, well, that's another story, right?
Yeah, we're waiting and see on that one. We have enough to do with Europe and
but that's a good thing.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, you know, that you guys from ANCA have been a very long, you know, major sponsor, and without people like you, we wouldn't be able to offer, you know, the things we do for our members. So, AustCham, thank you for watching.